to Queens Chronicle the series. Today's topic we're going to be talking about role reversal when you become the parent or when you have to then take care of your parent. So today's expert on our panel is none other than Miss Anna Bell. She is a licensed clinical social worker. I got that so right. She's also a mom. She's a minister. She's a life coach. But above all of that, she was actually the caregiver of her mom for how long?
10 years.
For 10 years. So we're going to learn some information, ask a couple questions. Be sure to write any of your questions down in the comment section when we watch this video, because she'll be online to answer, any questions that you may have. So let's give the floor to her and first say welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for
coming.
Me. Absolutely.
Yes. So go ahead and just start talking.
Okay, so I'm very passionate about this topic simply because, again, the age 65 and older are our fastest growing population in the United States. A lot of us have become caregivers. We've been part of that sandwich generation where we're taking care of children as well as taking care of our elderly parents at the same time. And being a social worker, you think you're going to be fully prepared for what that entails, but it was very difficult, a huge life lesson, and it really makes you take a step back to think about just preparing yourself for what your future is going to look like, and if you are prepared to get older, because there are some very real things you can do to make the situation better for you and your family members.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, for me, my parents are both, they'll be 65 this year. They're like a month apart, which I'm not sure how that happened, but they're literally a month apart. They are thriving. Dad lives in New York. Mom has just relocated to North Carolina. So they're living their best life. So as a person who right now doesn't even have to think about the them parent, one day needing help. How can I prepare for that? Because I wouldn't even know where to start, with that.
There's several areas you can pay. First of all, financial is the major one. I don't know, some parents are not forthcoming or open with their children to explain if they have savings, how many properties or kind of assets they have in their name or what have you. But it is very important when it comes to finances, and let me tell you why. So a lot of people won't tell you this, but I have to be very honest. The best way to get services for your senior or to prepare is to make sure that most of their assets are not in their name. Okay, so in this arena, being indigent is your best way to get services. And I know that doesn't sound good, and a lot of people have children that they may not trust with their assets, but if you do have somebody that you trust to take care of your assets, not squander them away, or not take them all and not try to provide any help to you, it is best to start turning things over in preparation. Houses, if you own property, the services will search back at least 5 years. Some states is 10 years. My mom ended up in Ohio, and in Ohio it was 10 years. I made the decision, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I took total care of her for 8 years before I made the transition to my family's nursing home in Ohio. And I stress that because it was family owned, and it was pretty much a necessity at the point when I did that. Was it easy to do total care? It was very difficult. And I was very fortunate that I had the job that I had. I had a boss at that time, Ms. Swan, who had a mom who she took care of with Alzheimer's. So she was very sensitive and very understanding when I would roll into work at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, tired, hadn't slept all night. She said, Anna, as long as you get your work done, I get it. leave at 5 because I had to go pick her up from adult daycare, come back home and just start parenting her again, you know, because at that point she followed me around everywhere I went. She called my name constantly. If she was sitting over there and I was right there, she would call my name until I came right over there beside her. If I went to the bathroom, she had to put a chair outside the door. At the end, she started sleeping in my bed. She couldn't be away from me at all. And then, you know, it's hard as a child watching your parent, especially my mama, who was this amazing, energetic Yale graduate, you know, active, always watch her decline, and rapidly decline. So it was a very difficult transition to watch. And every time she did something different, like I remember the first time she forgot my name, I cried like for hours. And then the first time she couldn't feed herself anymore, she couldn't remember how to get the fork in her mouth, or my mom was a minister's wife for 30 years, and she cussed one day, and I was like, oh my God, like I was devastated, because I was like, this is just not the mother that I remember. You know, she was always prim and proper, and all of those things. And so, you know, even challenges with, you know, the first time I had to take her to the bathroom and clean her up and all those kinds of things. It's a very hard kind of process that you go through.
So she fully reverted back, almost to like you were the mom and she felt like a baby or a child.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Yes, my parents went through that as well on both sides. So that was really, I guess, traumatic for me to see as well. And I have similar, obviously not to your extent, but I have, you know, similar experiences just because I watched the same thing happen to, you know, my grandmother and my grandfather, and then my grandmother's on my mom's side. My grandmother on my dad's side had Alzheimer's as well, and my grandmother on my mom's side had dementia. So I remember that day too when she couldn't remember my name, and it was extremely traumatic. And so, but one thing that I noticed, I know with my parents, and it became when my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer in 2005. That's really where it started. Taking her to the, you know, doctor's appointments, taking her to chemo, and so as a child to watch your parent, you know, taking on that role, and, you know, my parents being pastors and being already extremely busy, and then pretty much their life just being on pause to cater to their parents, you know, and so, you know, that was really, really hard for me. And I mean, to this day, I still admire, you know, the strength that it took, because I can only imagine to have to go through that. And these are your parents, like you said, parents that are energetic and that are very active and used to, I mean, we had to beg my grandfather to stop driving. I mean, he was 90 years old and he was like, I can drive, I mean, driving 2 miles per hour, you know, but we had to beg him like, please stop driving, you cannot drive anymore. So I guess my question is, for those caregivers, and I know my dad, he found ways to kind of just relax and prevent himself from getting burnout, because, you know, he would be at the doctor's office because it was ongoing, especially with my mom's mom. It was always, you know, Tuesday at the emergency room, Thursday at the emergency room, Friday at her primary care physician, and then Saturday she's at the cardiologist. I mean, it was constant. So my dad, he played golf and things like that. My mom would go shopping, but you see that it begins to take a toll on the caregiver. So my question is, what are some ways that a caregiver can I guess get away or cope with this huge responsibility? Because it's not just physical, it's not just taking them places, it's the emotional impact that it can take on someone. So what were some things that you learned or some things that you did to get through that process?
So if I was the perfect person, I would say I did the right thing. But everybody who knows me knows I am a control person. And so although I have probably one of the largest families in the world, I have a humongous family, I did not allow their intervention until it got really to the point where I didn't have an option. And so, but of course, being a social worker and talking about caregiver stress is extremely important, that you have some ways of outlet. And so people laugh at me when they ask me what did I used to do. And so my routine, again, my daughter was around 7 when all of this started happening. So I had a 7-year-old and I had my mama. And I would get up every morning, get my 7-year-old ready. I thought I was doing the right thing as a mother by like showing her that you take care of your parent and you do whatever. But my 7-year-old went to school and told him I never talked to her because I was always spending time with my mother. And in hindsight, I recognized that I pretty much was leaving her to her own devices. I was around, but she knew that I was feeding mom, cleaning her up. She had a bedtime, all of those things, and then I would get to her with homework maybe or what have you. And so I didn't do any of that self-care. I didn't do any of that, can you all help me? I remember one time my aunt said to me, you look horrible. When is the last time you slept? And I was like, I sleep. And what I slept was in my mother's room in a rocking chair because I had on baby monitor, but she would call me all night. And I could absolutely not go downstairs. And I had a house built in preparation for my mother getting older. So if you came to my old house, you would walk in the door, she had a full master suite, bathroom, whole nine on the first floor. I always knew I would take care of my parents, and I think my dad was 68 when I was born. And so, I know, right? My mom was 38.
That's
a whole nother show, right?
A whole nother
right?
show. We gonna have it.
Right. There were 30, I know, right? 30 years between them. And so I grew up with the idea I'm always going to take care of my parents. I'm going to do that. And so I would do that routine, get her up, whatever, get her ready. Then I have a half sister on my dad's side. She would come, she's a nurse, and she worked at adult daycare. She would come and pick her up and take her to adult daycare. And then I would take my child to school. Then at the end of the day, I would go and pick my mom up from adult daycare. I would get my daughter from aftercare. I would come home, I would do the cooking, make sure everybody ate, whatever, got my mom in bed, got my daughter in bed, and sit in my mother's room in a rocker chair. And it was, I did that for years. And while I was doing that, I started my PhD. And literally, people laugh at me about that, but it made me feel normal. And I know that sounds odd, but I love school, and once I finally would get somebody to sleep, one of the two to sleep, I could sit online and start doing some work and reading a book and, typing, and I felt normal.
You were allowed to escape.
I was allowed to escape, And I remember my aunt, she told me about how bad it was. She said, I'm taking her for the weekend. And when I tell you I could not sleep, I was like, nobody can take care of her like me. I know that. It's my aunt. I was adamant. I was just like, this is not right. And I never did that again. I just never did it again because it did not feel right. It did not feel right to me. So
just asking for help.
Asking for help is important. And again, I'm the only child from my mom, right? And so it was my sole responsibility, and I never wanted to put her in a nursing home. When I tell you, I fought tooth and nail not to do that, but I was okay with I would go back to it today. If my mom was still here, I'd take care of her again today. Although I was so tired and so drained, and I didn't realize how bad it was until I actually transitioned her to my family's nursing home in Ohio. I came home and I had no idea what to do with myself. I sat on the sofa and was like, what? I didn't know what to do with myself. So I got another job. That's what I did. To fill my, because I just,
to fill that space.
Yes, it was horrible. It was horrible for me, But self-care is extremely important. And I don't encourage anybody to do what I did at all. You have to take time. You have to ask for help. You have to have outside time. Outside of that, when you're constantly doing care, it's so important to take time, just to go away. Have some adult conversation. Because remember, my mom at that time, half the things she said didn't make sense to me. She had Alzheimer's. She would talk about all kinds of random things. She would sing. She would, call me all her mom's name, her dad's name. Anybody, she forgot my name. She would just talk about stuff, and I would just, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. Didn't know what she was talking about. Then I had my 7-year-old, right, who was talking
random
exactly, right.
You was
yes ma'am. I was just like, can I have some adult stimulating conversation, please? So it's very important to do that. And if you have family who's willing, please let them help, please.
Now, what about family? Because this is something else that I saw. What about when you have family that is not open to help, and then the weight comes on that one, that 1 or 2 people, and they're doing all of the work. Like, how do you deal with that?
They give visitation, and we send them a postcard. I'm sorry, that's not what.
Amen. Tell us how you really feel, right? Tell me how you really.
Let it out.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, studies prove that typically it's always women who do the care. That's what the majority is.
We're gonna have to change the studies because I have sons, and
right.
I'm grooming them to take care of
Good.
their mother.
That's right.
That's
That's
okay, but nobody can take care of you like your own child. So you get a good wife who understands that your responsibility to take care of your mama. But
yeah, and just because I was the only, there are tons of families who have multiple siblings, and usually one is the one who does the primary caretaking. And so, for me, I'm not in the business of forcing you to do something that you don't want to do, because you got to take excellent care. My mother, I'm telling you, when I say every night before she went to bed, I heated all her blankets. She was always warm. I took her to church. My mother was a bishop's wife. I took her to church every Sunday, wheelchair and all, dressed to the nine, all her jewelry. My mother wore rings and bracelets on every finger. That was her normal. I made sure she looked the same all the time. Although
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but I felt like I had to do that. And although my aunt was like, "You looking horrible when you slept," my mama didn't.
Right. From the top to the bottom.
She looked good. She looked good. And I remember when I transitioned her to my family's nurse home, and I was like, "You all need to heat her blankets." They were like, "What?"
You are not heating the blanket, man.
You are going to put her blanket in that dryer until it is warm.
Wow.
And then she'll sleep better. That was a trick I found out.
Yeah.
She slept better, and so what did they do? You heat that. Yes, you heat her blankets and you tuck her in properly. That's what you do.
What is some of the financial costs when you think about like home care versus maybe putting my parent in a home or bringing in a nurse? So I know my dad's military. He's ex-military. He was in all the branches but one. So he has services in place for him.
The veterans home and stuff,
for him if he ever has to go that route. What my daddy says is, you better tell your husband there's a room somewhere in the house that belongs to me, right? And I'm gonna be with you for 6 months, and your stuff is like he tells us, like, man, my dad is serious. I'm gonna be with you for 6 months, and I'm gonna be with you for, and we're gonna rotate. So just tell him that you are a package deal, like he says it all the time. My mom, on the other hand, loves her independence. My mom wants to forever be independent. She does not want to have to depend on anybody for anything. And I remember my mom's dad, I remember was in a home, and I hated the home. So I need to know, because I would never want my parents to be in a home, because the smell alone was just like horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible smell. So I never want, but really thinking what fees are associated when we talk about home care, private care, own room care.
Right. So I'm a proponent of keeping somebody home as much or as long as possible. There is definitely some signs when you are at the point of nursing home, and I could talk about that a little later. But as much as possible, if you can provide in-home services, that's what you should do. So I printed out just some general guidelines. So the adult daycare services are typically $70 a day. And that breaks up to like annually about $18,000 a year.
That's 2 years college tuition.
Right? Home care, right? So when you have somebody actually come into your home and provide care, like a homemaker service, and they're very limited. So when you talk about homemaker, they talking about doing some light cleaning. They may do laundry.
Wow.
They may cook a meal, and you may get 2 hours at most. They're typically $19 an hour, and if you break that up into yearly, that's about $19,000 a year. Now, if you actually have a home health care aide coming into the home, who may give you 4 hours, it's very difficult to get extended hours with home health care aides unless you're paying privately. And typically they're about $21 to $25 an hour, and that's about $21 to $25,000 a year. Now, when you talk about assisted living, so for those individuals who still want to maintain some independence, that don't have Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's care, they do have a lot of assisted living facilities that have a wing for Alzheimer's now, and dementia care, but they cost more. Okay. And everybody knows the distinction between dementia and Alzheimer's.
Share for the viewers.
Okay. So dementia is, your normal aging process where you start to forget things and things like that. But Alzheimer's is very progressive. So Alzheimer's, you end up forgetting how to do. Your body starts to shut down, your organs start to shut down, your brain is affected, so it doesn't remember that you ate. It doesn't remember how to go to the bathroom by itself. It doesn't remember anything. So it's a very progressive kind of disease. Whereas dementia, you may forget your children's names, you may forget, certain things, but it's not progressive to the point where your body, your physical body starts to shut down. But because Alzheimer's has that hardening of plaque in your brain controls all of your functions, your body starts to break down because it doesn't remember how to do that.
Wow.
So with assisted living, it's typically 34. I actually looked into assisted living for my mom before I made the decision to do the nursing home for my family, which again, a forced decision I'll tell y'all about later. But there's one in Greenbelt, and it was $3,600. And a lot of times, if you all think about this, the only money that a lot of seniors have is their retirement plans. And that's if they paid in enough quarters or they worked a government job or something where they have retirement. $3,600 is a month. That's a month.
That's a lot.
And that
That's a lot.
equates to about $41,000 a year. That's a lot. Now when you start to get to nursing home care, this is why, and it's a lot. It really is costly. So if you're talking about private room, it's usually $239 a day. That's around $87,000 a year, and if you're talking about semi-private, it's about $214 a day, and that's about $78,000 a year. And remember, with Medicare, which a lot of our seniors who work have, they only pay for the first 100 days of nursing home care. So after that's it. They pay for 100 days of nursing home care because it's called skilled care. And when you are in the nursing home facility, that skilled care starts from the day you enter. They only pay for 100 days. After that,
you're on your own.
You're on your own. Family members, your retirement, they will spend you down if you need to stay there and don't have the money. And what that means is your house, your car, any assets, stock, bank accounts, all of that. They will take all of that.
And that's true because my aunt put my uncle in a nursing home, and she was allowed to keep his Social Security because Social Security paid for the mortgage. But and as a result of that, she doesn't own her home. The nursing home does. Because they provided him care with the understanding that the money that should have been going to the nursing home stayed in the household to maintain the mortgage. And so in essence, the nursing home was paying the mortgage.
Now she's allowed to stay there because if they're married, they can't take that person out of the house. But that's one of the only rules they have. We're not taking it. So if you are married and one person has to go in nursing home, you can stay in your home. But they still at the end they're going to want to recoup every amount of money.
Because I worked in a nursing home for a while, and that was one of the big issues. It's really about the asset piece. And so if you have assets, you can't. They're looking at you can't have, like Anna said, you can't have anything in order to go into the nursing home. So there was a lady who was looking to put her uncle in there, and he had property, he had finances, he had all that stuff. And they looked 5 years back and they said, he has all these not enough to care for him outside of the nursing home, but they couldn't take him because he had that.
Wow.
So even if she was to turn it over, get rid of it, because they're looking for 5 years back, he still didn't qualify.
And that's why I said it's best to prepare ahead of time. Your parents, and I know a lot of parents say, no, I'm still young and I want to manage my own finances. And I'm just saying, if you have a child that you trust or family members you trust, it is so much better to start turning things over, because it's a criminal offense to spend down immediately in order to get into a facility or to get Medicaid.
Yeah.
It's a offense. They can get you for fraud.
Yeah, I can't do jail time.
Yeah, they looked into that.
Yeah.
For jail.
So the earlier you do that, the better it is for you to do that.
It's such a, like, there's a commercial, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's a father and a son, and the father is tying his son's shoe, and then his dad walks by. He says, "Wait, Dad, your shoe is untied," and he stops and he goes to tie his dad's shoe, and it's kind of like, and I don't even know what the product is they're selling, but whenever I see that commercial, it's like, wow, like, that's so many people that I know, who are now taking care of their parent, or have adjusted their life to accommodate a parent moving in, or a parent coming to live with them. It's like, wow, I'm not there yet, but I know my parents are getting older. My parents are getting older, so my biggest thing, or my biggest fear, is not being able to take care of them when they need me the most. Like, it's a picture that I think I saw on Instagram or something, and in the picture, it's a parent, and she's pregnant, and she has the baby, and this baby's a toddler, and they go through all the stages, but then at some point the child becomes the parent, and you've seen it, and you watch the child, like, then become and take care of the parent, and it's like, that's just so weird. I think you told me it's called the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? So what is that? What is that exactly?
And that's really what it is. It's when it's typically middle age, people around my age taking care of a senior as well as taking care of children.
Wow.
And you're in the middle of a sandwich generation where you're doing this dual care roles, with different age groups. And so it's not uncommon in this age. It's very common that is the way it is. Or you have adult children who will come back home, and you have your senior parents who are living with you as well. And so that's just something that is very common and will increase, because again, people are living longer. With all these advances in healthcare and treatment, people are living longer. They even have different stages of elderly. So at 65, they don't even consider you old at this point.
Yeah,
They start at 72. Right? They start at 72, and it goes up from there. And then they have the old. They have different categories. And so the average age, people are living to 85. People are living surpassing 85. People are, and it's going to get even more, because the advances in technology and medical treatment has gone, are so far ahead at this point.
Yeah, my aunt is 92 and my mom's 85. So,
absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's do closing remarks. It's such a big topic. It's just such a big topic. So again, if you're watching this and you have specific questions for Anna, drop them down in the comment section, and she'll be able to respond to you when the particular video airs. Also, if you want her to come out and to speak to maybe you or your congregation, how can they contact you? How can they reach you?
So they can check out my website, which is AnnabelleSpeaks.com.
Okay.
Fill out the contact section and I'll respond.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do closing comments. Anything you want to leave with the viewer? This is when you say your closing comments, and because you're the guest, you get to go first.
Okay. Well, just that it is, I sympathize and empathize with anybody who is providing care. That self-care is really important. Caregiver stress is very real. And if there is any way you can get a support network to help you through this is the time to do it. Also, preparation is very key. There are Maryland Departments of Aging, Virginia Departments of Aging, DC Office on Aging. All of those have tons of information on their websites that can, provide you assistance and lead you in a path that will at least have supports and networks that are out there for you. And also there are support groups, and I would encourage anybody who is providing care to join a support group.
Okay. Yes.
I guess I would say I think it takes a special person to be a caregiver, and it's a responsibility that I feel like God chooses his strongest warriors to uphold. And so as hard as it can be and as stressful as it can be, just know that you were chosen to be that person's daughter or son, and to be proud of that position no matter how hard it is. And God will never put more on us than we can bear. And even if we can't rely on other people, we can rely on God, and we can lean on God, and we can trust in him to get us through our hardest battles. And so just know that God knows, what you're going through. He knows the burden. He knows the emotional, the physical impact. But just know he's always there. You can always lean on him.
Amen. Go on, preach.
This is a very important topic, and I think that this is something that everyone can relate to at some level. And so I hope that the information out there was helpful to someone, and if not helpful to you, pass it on to someone who could use it. Our elderly, our seniors, they have so much wisdom. And if you think about it from a perspective of a child, your parents took care of you, and they care for you, they put their needs before their own. And so this is an opportunity to be able to kind of give back and to show thanks for all they've done by taking care of them. And if it's not something that you can do yourself physically, then you can, make some preparation in place to make sure that they have the best care possible.
Amen. I think my closing comment would definitely be kind of echoing, what Danielle said, is that, it's a chosen position to be in. And a lot of us find ourselves in that position, or somebody. You may not actually be there right now, but somebody, who's taking on the role of caregiver for their parent, or the roles have switched. And so what I would say is, self-care is important. Stay prayed up. Stay connected to a church. Find somebody, so that you can go and release. You have to have a way of release. You have to have, like Anna said, adult conversation and hanging out with adult friends. So maybe I know for me, my takeaway is to start thinking about that long-term care. Do you have long-term care? My mom has some form, because she's a government worker, so she has some form of it, but I don't know to what extent. But start asking those hard questions, now that they really don't want to answer, because I don't want you to look up and be like, oh yeah, so you go in there, I can't put you anywhere else. So start asking those hard questions, and remember that, like Danielle said, you are equipped for this. If you find yourself in that position, in that role right now, God doesn't take us anywhere he's prepared us for. And so you are equipped, for the role that you're in. And it's an honor. I think in a lot of races, cultures, I should, that's a better word, that they reverence the elderly. They look up to the elderly. It's an honor to get old. It's an honor to take care of your grandparent or your mom. In other cultures, not so much. And so I would want to be part of the culture, or in my household, we honor our grandparents and our parents and like that. Amen? Amen. So we thank you so much for watching what? Queens Chronicles, the series. And we'll see you next week. God bless, and have an awesome time. Bye!